Hello, and welcome back to the What Problem Are You Solving podcast, where we believe that finding out what problem you are trying to solve turns into what pays. We're two lean startup coaches that have a passion for quickly delivering value before you spend too much. As you might remember, I'm John Ruark. I'm a lean startup coach and consultant in the DC metro area. And with me, as usual, we have my friend and compatriot, Ty Smith.
Ty Smith, how are you, John?
I'm great, doing well tonight.
Outstanding.
We are sacrificing watching the State of the Union live tonight to put this together.
Well, I don't know about you, but I got another 55-inch TV that's off to my left that I'm watching. So
got that. Plus, we'll be hearing about it for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So tonight, we wanted to talk about readiness levels. Since we are all about figuring out what problem you're solving in a lean startup innovation context, how do you know if your organization is ready for this innovation? And in fact, is there a way that you could possibly measure the maturity of something like innovation? Now, the DoD and other agencies have adopted this technology readiness level thing, TRL, it's called, as a way to measure technology development. Kind of goes all the way back in like the 80s in the NASA time frame. But they were looking at a 1 to 9 scale of a technology readiness level, TRL 1 to TRL 9, of how mature is this new technology, right? And so you can imagine where some technology might be very brand new, not really been tested, not fully functioning, but they're onto something. How do you objectively measure something that is in various states of maturity? So they added this maturity level with its own scale. You can go check out technology readiness level on Wikipedia or others, or we may even start including that in the show notes. But a new corollary has been added called the innovation readiness level. So, Ty, what is an innovation readiness level in comparison?
So if you think about NASA's thinking, hey, we just had an idea to all the way to actually putting something in space, they had to have a way to figure out whether or not they were heading in the right direction. So as we all know, innovation is all about having an idea and rapidly, what gets you paid, what problem you're solving, rapidly getting to that solution as quickly as possible. But you want to be able, and these are scientists. I mean, we know they're rocket scientists, literally, not to be pejorative, but they are rocket scientists. And so for them, it was coming off and saying, how do we know it's step one? Well, what would step one look like? Well, how do we know step two? Well, what would step two look like? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. 9 being it is ready to be launched. It's ready for either market or monetization or actual use. And so that readiness level has been adopted, at least in the to look at whether or not your innovation, not just your tech, TRLs, not just your tech, but your innovation. And so what we want to be able to talk about is how do those readiness levels equate in an innovation space? As lean startup coaches, we are always helping people think about the problem that they're solving, coming up with some concept of how it all goes together, and then iteratively testing and building and matching with their customer to the point where they go, hey, we have something that's 70-80%, but it's ready to go. We can go to market with it. And so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Great. So the community, which is great, very great and very open, very much like the Agile community, they'll post ideas, comments, and sharing things all over Medium and blog posts and whatnot. There's a couple that we've found and that emulate the TRL levels from NASA and uses a 1 to 9 scale. So we're going to walk through the 9 levels of innovation as kind of pushed through primarily by Steve Blank. And we'll walk through kind of what those mean and how do you know how mature your innovation is. So starting off with number 1.
But before you go there, John, I think it's going to be important for our listeners to understand that there are going to be some terms that, if you listen in maybe podcast number 3, 4, 5, 6, you'll get to hear what those things mean in kind of a more full and substantive way, not just as we kind of pass along and say, mission model canvas. Like, what was that?
What is that? Actually, it brings up a good point. It might even be a good way that we can walk through the next 9 levels, the next 9 shows. So
There you go.
hey, look at that. It makes perfect sense. Love it when a plan comes together.
Hello.
Okay. Starting at the basic one, right? This is the most immature level, IRL 1 or Innovation Readiness Level 1. This is your first pass of a mission model canvas with the problem sponsor. This would be an instance where you're just starting off. You need a blank sheet of paper and you need to lay out all the different pieces of your business model and or mission model, as it depends on if you're in a kind of a nonprofit space, and sit down with your problem sponsor, this executive or leadership that is authorizing you to do the work. You need to sit down with them and just kind of lay out all the cards on the table as you know them. But guess what? It's just your first step. So that's why they considered IRL level 1 is that you've completed this first step of laying out a business model canvas or a mission model canvas with the problem sponsor and start collecting ideas. What's step 2?
So step 2 is really interesting because it's important for anybody who has a business or has a mission that they're trying to say, you know what, I think I can make a change. I have some really cool innovation that I think it'll work. But everything that you come up against is in context. And so what you want to do is to look at all the pressures that are impacting your business model. Again, we'll go over a business model and all the pieces associated with business model later on. But you want to look at, so what are the industry impacts that I need to worry about? What are the macroeconomic impacts? In other words, what's happening in the larger context to be thinking about that could economically impact. And when we talk about economics, we're not just talking about money. We're talking about people optimizing their choices, either through their time or their cash or their efforts. You want to think about what's the market doing? What's the market influences that I need to be concerned of? In other words, what are the choices that consumers have that they can actually advantage? And finally, you want to look at the technological and legal impact. So what are those pieces kind of pushing against your business or your mission that in your innovation, like I have a great idea. What are those impacts? And so that's step number 2. Step number 3, John.
Right. So after you've laid out your first plan, talked it through with your problem sponsor, and then thought about all the external forces that are pushing against your good idea. Well, now the fun begins because you need to go out and talk to people.
Why?
Because you haven't figured out what problem you're trying to solve.
Wait. I'm the expert, John. I know. Look, I used to be one of those people. Why would I want to talk to anybody?
You know what? You should never fall in love with your first idea.
Oh, okay.
Maybe or your second or your third, because
yeah.
While as an engineer, even though you may believe wholeheartedly that your solution is correct, you only have a data point of 1, and a single point does not a trend make. So you have to get out and talk to people, potentially your future customers, right? So you want to do as many interviews as possible to really start to feel out the idea. And then guess what? This costs you nothing. But once you get many data points, now you can start to see trends, themes, and ideas float to the top, and you will quickly invalidate some really bad ideas as well. And it's better to find out the problems now before you start building anything than 6 months to 2 years down the road, right? So you have to go out with your first plan, your 1-page sheet of paper that says, here's my mission model canvas or my business model canvas. Here's what I think is the right solution, and go do some interviews. And we'll talk more about customer interviews at a different time. But at this stage of maturity, you really shouldn't proceed throughout the organization until you've completed this step, because you really don't know if it's a problem, even if you come with a solution, even if that solution is solving a problem for other people in your organization rather than just yourself. Because even if it's a great idea for you, you have a hobby. If you have a great idea for many other people, you have something that pays.
It's interesting. I'm sorry, John. It was interesting the way you oh, crap. I now forget what I was going to say. You were on such a roll that I've lost it. But Go ahead.
I think the key part here is, again, just remember that your passion for your project is a single data point.
Mhm.
And as one of our friends at work says, that what is it? A good idea in my head is great, but my idea in your head is genius,
Right.
to paraphrase. And so it's not that you're selling, it's not that you're marketing. You're actually trying to make sure that other people see the problem that your solution is trying to solve.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, what is the next step, Ty? Number 4.
So number 4, this is like the heart. This is what's really important in doing innovation. The idea is to build something with as little money coming out of your pocket as possible, period. And so after you've kind of created, kind of crafted, framed your business inside of this canvas, after you've looked at all the pressures that surround your business, after you've done some of these interviews, you want to build something people can touch. Now, it's a low fidelity. What do we mean by that? It means that you don't put a whole lot of technology in it. As a matter of fact, you want to build something. If you're a coder, and I feel sorry for you, John, I know as an engineer, that you don't want to actually build something, put solder to iron unless you have to prove what we call a minimum viable product. Now, for those of you that have been in the innovation space, you've heard this term, and you know what? It's been wrecked. People have run cars over, backed over, beep, 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 boom, 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 over this term of MVP. Minimum viable product literally is the smallest thing that you can cobble together. Now, it could be a piece of paper. It could be a pamphlet. If it looks like something that's kind of electronic, you put it up on a website that doesn't do much, but it's a smallest set of pieces that you can cobble together to test whether or not your best guess of what creates value for a customer is in the right direction. 4th level of what you and your team want to do is to produce a prototype, a low fidelity, minimal viable product to learn whether or not you're building the right thing. Step number 4.
Start small, right?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Start small. And so number 5.
Which is hard for engineers, right? Because you want to go right to solution space. You want to get the solder iron out, like you said.
Yep.
Well, I could just let me just code it up. I think I know what they want.
Stop it.
Stop it. That's a lot.
You don't know what they want yet. You got to show them something that they can play with. And go, no, that ain't it. Or, hey, you're onto something. And if you're onto something, you go to step 5, right?
Exactly. Because on step 3, you've done lots of customer interviews. You've extracted themes. You've started building a prototype, low fidelity, minimum viable product. And now you start testing that in front of those same customers. And what you're actually looking for at this point is a value proposition to mission fit, right? Or in commercial industry, we call it, do you have the problem solution fit? Right?
Say more about that.
Because once you start showing even a rough MVP to potential customers, you will get immediate feedback on whether that scratches their itch or not. And you will find out, well, yeah, I kind of like that, but if you can do this, that'd be great. Or that's amazing. I want that right now. Or that totally sucks. That doesn't solve my problem. Go away. You're going to get a variety of answers like that. And what you're looking for are tweaks to your low fidelity, not a lot of money MVP, so that you start checking away. And just the more customers you show, the more you're marrying up this solution with their problems. Now you start locking in. And when I've heard people say, well, when do you stop? Do you just do like thousands of interviews and hope for the best? And when do you keep going, or when do you just start going to the next stage? And I like to keep it simple. How about the Pareto principle? When 80% of your customers see this as a potential solution to their problem, great. That's time to move on. It's the 80-20 rule.
Yep. So one of the things that we noticed that when we teach this, that there's another term that you'll get to know later on in the podcast, is something called a value proposition canvas. So we've introduced a business model canvas. We've introduced its cousin known as the mission model canvas. And now we want to introduce the value proposition canvas. And so we'll have a conversation about that.
Right. All cheap, free tools that can help you structure your thinking.
Yep.
All right. So what is step 6, Ty?
Step 6 is when you start to think about another concept where we talk about the 3 pieces of what makes a real product, a real offering valuable and vital to somebody. We talk about 3 concepts known as viable, desirable, and feasible. And then real quick on that. A viable product means that it can be paid for itself. It costs less than the value than you get out of it. It's really a dollar cents issue. A feasible idea is whether or not you have the capacity, the resources to build that thing. But step 6 is where you're starting to validate the right side, which is called the desirable. That's when you really start to know that product that John just talked about in step 5, where you have the problem solution fit. You're really starting to validate that right side of, we are really starting to hit through our iterations of this thing that this growing and more sophisticated minimal viable product. We are now starting to validate the idea that the mission, the value, if this is a commercial, the revenue generation stream of this thing is real, that people will actually pay for this. They'll say, I want that. Or if it's an emission side, you are really helping me solve. And, the engineers in the room would go, yeah, but it's only like 80% good. And they go, that's okay. I'll take that. I'll take the 80% solution now over the 100% solution 3 years from now. And so level 6 is about the validation of the mission or the revenue parts of that on the right-hand side of this canvas. Again, viable, desirable, and feasible. You start to test at level 6. You're testing the desirability. Does a customer want that? Will they be able to do something with it? Will they give me money for it? IRL 6.
And so now you're showing that in front of the customer. You're validating all of this side of the canvas. You are really starting to get what we call traction, which is one of the most important things for a startup. Which traction is merely how do you turn browsers into buyers, right? Or how quickly can you get the conversion rate of new users on your solution? And remember, it's not fully built yet.
You know what, John? I kind of like that, browsers to buyers. And I think that is really, really a key idea, that the traction, ladies and gentlemen, is not about does the thing work. The traction is really measuring, can I get somebody to buy what I have now? But it's not perfect.
Right. And it's going to get better.
I'll take it anyway.
It's exactly. Better over time. And you want those early adopters.
Yes.
You want to validate with your early adopters. You don't want to validate with these people who are like, you're not going to, take this technology out of my cold, dead hands, right? Before I transition. No. Give up on them. Start with the people who are like, I've been waiting for this all my life. I've tried to solve it myself and haven't found a way. You've come in and relieved the stress from me. So we're now moving into the space of, well, if that's true and you start getting that traction, well now you get permission to move into the higher level fidelity of your minimum viable product. So now we're up at IRL 7, or Innovation Readiness Level 7, where, okay, now it's not just smoke and mirrors anymore. You can start building out the back-end functionality. Why do you have permission? Because you know you're solving the right thing.
Yes, sir.
Because you now know at this level, you're more than halfway up this IRL scale. You know what problem you're solving at this point. And if you don't, you shouldn't be allowed to move up.
But they gave me money.
But you don't know what you're solving.
But I got a budget.
But nobody wants it.
Oh, you're such a bummer, John. Jeez.
Stop being a wet blanket.
That's right.
And so now, if all of these previous steps have been validated with lots of data points, with actual customers, now you're getting into permission to start building out the more detailed MVPs. Still MVPs, but you can start building things that are more than just paper prototypes, more than just back of the napkin or UI drawings. Now we can start getting into some pseudocode, some temporary code, hidden features. You can start doing these kind of things that are flushing out more and more details. And that's okay, because you've already got permission, not from your sponsor, but from the users, which is the most important set of permission. Well, when you build that out, Ty, now you have to start thinking about IRL level 8, which
Mm.
is
IRL level 8. So what does every person who has a great idea that goes to somebody and says, hey, I got this really great idea, could you spot me some cash to do this? What does that person say? When am I going, if I give you some money, when am I going to make my cash back?
right. There's
This is
nothing
the
free.
idea. I'm sorry.
There's nothing free.
Nope, nothing free. This is when you start to explore. Again, we'll introduce the canvas to you, but the left-hand side. And the left-hand side is the feasibility side. Do I have the resources? Do I have the key activities? Do I have the partners happen? This is the place where you start. This is the level you start to think about, how can I scale this thing? If I have market traction, if I have customers that are willing to give me some cash, I've moved not only the early adopters, but the next level of adopters that say, hey, I'll take some of that. The also guys, how do I scale the resources? How do I scale the back end of my thing to make sure that I'm meeting the market demand? What do I need to be able to do? Who do I need to be able to tap into? What you think about McDonald's. McDonald's is a really great supply chain company. It was great for Ray Kroc to have a McDonald's, but once they figured out that they could scale this, if they did not have the back end supply chain, all of those resources, all of those key activities that happen in the back, it would never have gotten anywhere. And so at level 8, you're trying to validate your resource strategy. What am I putting together? How am I going to do all that at cost?
Yeah. How am I
At
going to
a
build it?
viable cost. I'm sorry?
Just how am I going to build it?
Yeah. How am I going to build it in a way that becomes sustainable? So you're really at level 8, really trying to create a sustainable product, a sustainable system.
So what happens if it costs you more to build it than the value you're creating?
Well, I don't know of any business, except for maybe the federal government, that is spending more than the value that they get out of it.
Right.
There is not a business in the world. Part of my background is I was an executive for a while at home box office. They would narrow down all their back end to make sure their upfront was paying the bills and then some. And so there is never a business. The strategy of how you put all your stuff together should be about cost management in relationship to your value creation, be it revenue, be it mission, whatever it might be.
Yep.
And so once you can do that, all of those things, you finally get to the point where you're doing what, John?
What's that? Oh, getting all the way to IRL level 9?
I set you up, man. Come on now.
Here's the ball, and I dropped it.
There you go. That's okay. You picked it back up.
Because now, once you've got the right side, the left side, upside, all the sides covered, you're now starting to build out a sustainable business. How do you know? How do you know that you are getting somewhere and you're growing that meets all of the objectives of not only your business or your innovation, but also the corporate objectives as well? Well, now at this point, do we finally reach the ultimate level of Innovation Readiness Level 9, which is establish your metrics that matter. So the real question that bugs me to death, because I'm kind of known as the metrics guy at work too.
Yes, you are.
Is when you start a project, everyone's like, great, how are we going to track it? Well, how are you going to track what? Like, you have no idea what your goal is yet. Once you figure out what your goal is, and you get this traction, you start building, validating this stuff, then you can set these metrics that matter. But you don't start off right away. So the poor analogy I'm trying to think of on the spot is, if someone says, well, I want to be healthier, so I'm just going to start tracking how many miles I run. Well, maybe running isn't the best thing for your body, right? Maybe you have a jacked up ankle. Maybe, there's something that's stopping you from running. So if you just measure success as running the mile, but your goal is health, you could be chasing the wrong metric. And in effect, doing more damage than actually stepping back and looking at what metrics matter, what metrics that matter for your organization. So, and how do you know what those are? Well, you've learned a lot through the previous 8 steps of this innovation readiness level, and you're gonna have assumptions about all these different aspects of your business model, and you're going to find out which ones are what we call critical assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to find, boy, all of this looks good, but if I don't solve this one thing, this is really the one metric that matters. And this is a common thing in the innovation land out in the community, is while you can track everything, and organizations like Amazon track everything and look for anomalies, but because we don't have all the resources that Amazon does, what if you started with, what is the one set of assumptions that are key to establishing your business model, or else the whole thing falls apart?
Yeah.
And if you can identify what those are, you want to attack the riskiest thing first. You want to put that head on, and that's going to be the only thing that you should be tracking right up front. Your bosses may not like that because they're used to, cost, schedule, performance, and ROI and customer lifetime value. At this point, for innovation, it doesn't matter because you're not yet to scale. You're close because you have something at this level. Once you get to IRL level 9, you are smoking. You are hot stuff. You've got customers that want it. You're starting to build things smartly. And now start to identify those one metrics that matter. What are they? I can't tell you because I don't know what you're building and for whom. But it should be something that has growth or growth potential. It is the riskiest thing that you need to attack, and it should be short term in the sense of like 3 months or less to know, are you headed in the right direction, or do you need to revector?
Right. It's interesting. You said something I think is really important to foot stomp. That kind of government term. I'm going to foot stomp that to really think about, and that is what matters. What measures should you be measuring? The ones that matter. That even in this IRL, and hopefully you'll get a chance to see what the readiness levels matrix looks like, or the model looks like. Think of a thermometer. At the bottom, unknown; at the top, green, right? And any color in between. That it seems to me, and stands to reason, that these things are recursive. That you just don't satisfy one and move to the next. That you're always testing. The one of the critical assumptions that is a part of the whole innovation process is that it's all about recursive validated learning, which would be another one of those things we can talk about later on. What does it mean to do validated learning? But this IRL level is recursive in nature. So if you thought that you had at, let's say, number 4, and you went to 5, and you thought you had a problem solution fit, and it didn't work, well, maybe you need to go back and think about the fidelity of your MVP. Is it the right MVP until you can satisfy the next level?
Yep.
And so there's a kind of a going back OODA loop feel to how you do the readiness levels in innovation.
But Ty, that implies that innovation is not linear and innovation is messy, and I don't like to hear that.
Too damn bad.
That's right.
Press on.
That's what it is. Right.
Yeah.
That iteration and recursiveness, as you call it, is really what's going to matter, because just we can't emphasize that enough. That even if you're on to something, you have to constantly go back and make sure that you're not going down a rabbit hole and solving the wrong problem.
Which means that WPAYS is not just what problem you're solving; it also says what pays.
Bingo.
See, somebody's paying attention.
All right, so Ty, why don't you again summarize 1 to 9 what all the steps are on this innovation readiness level as a recap?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. The first level of the ROI, you need to construct and frame out your business in any one of the tools, any way that you can do it. The tool that we're suggesting is either something called a business model canvas or a mission model canvas. Once you do that, you want to do an examination of all the pressures that are around your canvas: macroeconomic, industry, customer, and legal technological. That's not a word, but anyway, you go to number 3. You want to go out and you want to validate your assumptions about your canvas and the ecology that it sits inside of by doing interviews. Lots and lots of interviews, because never assume that you know what the customer wants. Once you do that, you want to prototype a low fidelity, something that we call an MVP, a minimal viable product, a product that you cobble together to make sure in the the smallest ways to ensure that you're learning about what your customers like and want. Once you do that, you go to level 5, which is developing an understanding of your problem solution fit, where those things meet. And we can do that on something called a value proposition canvas. You have to be stand by. Once you do that, you get to level 7. You're going to validate the right side of your canvas, which we'll again talk about, which is the desirability side. Do people want it? Will it help them get their job done? At number 7, you're going to look at, once you do that, you're going to develop a higher fidelity MVP that it looks more in the, some people may know it as a prototype, but it really is, again, about learning whether or not you're going down the right path. Once you do that, now you're going to start to think about, how can I build out my back end to make sure that I have all the resources, activities, and cost containment structures, the left-hand side, also known as the feasibility, to figure out whether or not we have what we have. And then finally, you're going to arrive at innovation readiness level number 9, where if you have built the right thing, if you have discovered the customer, if you know what your customer wants, measure it. Right, John?
Just that simple.
Hello.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. I think we're kind of close to time to cut things off. But in summary, when this is a good metric or measurement that you can have to test either your organizational readiness for new innovation coming through. This could be a yardstick to measure. Let's just say you have an innovation pipeline. That might be something that you can measure the maturity level of innovations as they go through your organization, to make sure, have they completed these different steps before they go off and get integrated into kind of your core business operations.
Yes, sir.
But even as a measuring stick for yourself, if you are an innovator or entrepreneur, here's a way that you can kind of measure, how am I doing? Where am I in the process? Where am I in the movie? About building out and validating my innovation, my good idea in front of customers before I start putting things out there too quickly and risking failure. Let's not have failure, because we want to ensure that once you know what problem you're solving, you figure out what pays.
Yes, sir.
Simple. All right. Anything else you want to add before we close, Ty?
Hey, it was good talking to you, John, and looking forward to the next one.
All right. We'll see you all next week. Thank you very much. See you.